So guys, the Canon EOS 1DX Mark III. I've used a 1DX Mark II before. A friend of mine's got one, and he's just ordered the Mark III. So hopefully I'll be able to have a go with that. It's £6,499 in the UK. Apparently in the US, by the time you've added all the taxes and stuff, it's close to $10,000, which is, it seems a lot of money. I've had a look through. I'm on Wex's website at the moment. I had a look through the thing. I watched a few videos about this camera. I'm not a Canon user by any means, but it doesn't mean that I don't like Canon stuff. I've got friends who are Canon shooters. I've got friends who are Nikon shooters. I've got friends who are Sony shooters. Panasonic, Hasselblad. They're all over. All over the range really. And I don't hate any users at all. We get all this brand loving stuff. Yes, I use Sony and I really like what I use, mainly because I've got used to using it. If you use one piece of equipment, one type of equipment, you get to know it fully, and you're going to get the most out of it. So if I was a Canon user, I'd obviously probably stay Canon and I'd probably get the most out of that. But obviously I'm Sony. So but anyway, but this is obviously a major update on the 1DX Mark II with some new things. But I've had a look at some of the things I think that jumped out of me personally a bit more than some of the other functions and things like that. So obviously it's got all the information on the website anyway. Obviously you can read about its deep learning AF and stuff like that. But that's just basically another word for AI, I guess. But there's always different words they come out with every year that are a little bit fashionable and a little bit different to someone else's versions of the similar product. Yeah, so obviously the Canon EOS 1DX Mark III is Canon's new flagship DSLR, and obviously where we've all gone mirrorless now, there's still a lot of people out there with using DSLRs still. They don't necessarily want to make the transition to mirrorless for a particular reason, or because this is obviously aimed at wildlife and sports heavily, that the major investments are the lenses. So if you're heavily invested in different lenses for the DSLR market, especially if you're doing this for obviously full-time sports stuff like football, any of the other sports, and rugby and all whatever shots they're doing constantly all day long, they're going to those cameras they've purchased maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, and all the lenses and everything they've got have had probably for possibly even longer. That's a massive investment that you can't just go, I think I'll just sell that and buy some new lenses, because it would cost you thousands. End of the day, lenses are amazing. The high-end lenses from 10 years ago to sort of now are, yes, they've got better, but this, that sort of age range, there's still amazing bits of kit, especially if you buy like the high-end stuff. Same as the cameras, cameras from 5 years ago to now, all amazing. Yes, then some have got better, some have got little weaknesses here or there. Different makes have got different features, just blah blah blah. But the fact that Canon are still looking after their DSLR users is great. Sony obviously took a different path. They because they bought out Konica Minolta, and then moved in with their own cameras. So you started off with the basic A200 up to the A700, and then he went the A99, which was the first full frame. Sorry, the A900. Sorry, not the A99. The first A900 was the first full frame body, and very basic really, but an amazing camera still. And then he went A99, where they tried the SLT system out, but then obviously decided mirrorless is the way forward, with all the technology advancements that they'd had, and so it kind of dwindled out the A99, A900 area, and that's when they sort of just decided to focus on the E-mount. With Canon and Nikon, obviously 5 years down the line, they've now decided obviously they wanted to follow path and obviously go mirrorless, but like I said, they've still got to look after their massive following of the DSLR market. So this is why obviously Canon and Nikon are still bringing out amazing bits of kit like this, which are very expensive, and they're much bigger than the mirrorless cameras. But for example, when you see the sport shooters with the say the 1DX Mark II, or now will be the 1DX Mark III, on the side of the pitches, or horse trials and stuff like that, they're never handheld. They're always on a tripod of some sort, or a monopod or something like that. So because they're using large fast lenses, so it doesn't really matter how big the camera is. Really, it's most of the time it's on some kind of stabilization pod, or tripod or whatever. So I don't think that's really a major issue. But the fact is that these are work tools. They're not for the hobbyist, really. If you've got the money and you want to buy the best camera out there, I would definitely say go for it. And if you can make the most of it, brilliant. But these are real workhorses. They are designed to take all the elements. They're designed to be turned on all day, shooting thousands and thousands of shots to get that one shot for the newspaper or for a magazine or whatever. And they are, that's what I'm saying, just a workhorse. They're designed, they're like the shy horse pulling a cart full of beer, delivering beer around the cities and stuff years ago. It's that kind of thing. It has one job, that's what it does. It's just bang, 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 and it will shoot all day long. So my favourite bits that I kind of like about the camera, but there's a couple of little bits where you think, why didn't they do that? It's big enough to give a few options. But obviously I'm not a camera designer, so, and obviously technical side of things obviously maybe not possible, but it's just something I thought I'd bring up. So obviously it's a flagship camera, so it's their new high-end sports wildlife focused beast of a DSLR. But after all the cameras out there that now have flippy screens, there's still no flippy screen. It's literally just a fixed screen on the back. It's got full sensor readout and full sensor no crop at 4K, which is great now, because obviously before on some of the Canon cameras they always used to crop in. And if you want it, you got C4K at 24p at 10-bit at 422 internal. The crazy thing about that is, which I'll put up actually, is the amount of memory it's using. And I'll put a little clip up actually. You can see the minutes, how many minutes it's using per gig. It's mad. I think something like 128 gig is gone in 5 minutes. So it's not for the faint-hearted. If you want to make a movie or whatever, yeah, you're going to get the best possible quality out of this thing. But it's a memory muncher, especially on the video side, especially if you're running it at the full spec. But also it's got you can set it to sort of crop in a little bit and use the sensor stabilization. So it's not actually sensor stabilization like IBIS, but it's a bit like the GoPro, where it crops in a little bit, and basically any movement it counteracts on that sensor. So it's pretty good, I think. And obviously you've got lens stabilization on some of the lenses, so you kind of got some bits and pieces, but obviously no IBIS. For some reason it's got a mini HDMI port instead of a full HDMI, and problem with the little mini ones is they break quite easily. You only got to knock them and you can snap and bend them. With a full size HDMI port, they are pretty beefy. The other thing it can't do, which is weird, even though because obviously it can do full raw video in camera, but it can't actually apparently do raw video to an external capture device, like obviously a recorder, which seems strange, but obviously they decided to keep it internally. It also does one cool thing, which obviously I can do now with my A7R4, separate stills and video functions. So when you or obviously in video and or stills, you've got your two different function menus where you can adjust things, but this does, which I actually haven't tried the A7R4. If you're in video, apparently the old 1DX Mark II used to, if you went from still, say if you had a 1/100th of a second, f5.6 and ISO 100, if you'd set your camera to that for stills and then you swapped it over to video, it will basically be that. It would just copy over those settings. But if you go to video now, apparently it will basically give you the two options. So basically you can have different settings for your video, and different settings for your stills side of things. So when you swap over, it gives you those options. The only cons I could see really is it's massive and it's pretty heavy. But obviously it's aimed for sports and wildlife, and it's obviously a video hybrid kind of camera, which they pretty much all are nowadays. But this thing is an absolute beast by the looks of it. Looking at the quality of it by other videos and things I've seen recently, it's got great body sealing as always. I mean, build quality of Canon's always been very high. Even the sort of cheaper cameras are pretty good. AF system, brand new design apparently, and it's got 191 cross-type AF points with the mirror down. So as a DSLR, if you flick the mirror up and go into live view, so it basically becomes a mirrorless with just the back screen, you've got 3,869 focus points. Not sure if they work the same way as the Sony stuff, but obviously it's going to be very efficient. Apparently it's 90 grams lighter than the old 1DX Mark II, so almost 100 grams lighter. Don't know whether that really makes much difference, but the new AF selection button, little joystick sensor thing up the top, apparently it's much nicer to use now than previous, but it works really well for moving your focus points around. And now it's a CF Express card, and it's got 2 slots, so a continuous frame rate with the mirror down is 16 frames per second. With the mirror up it can do 20. And with JPEGs, full size JPEGs, it will do an unlimited burst. So basically you could have a 128 gig card or a 256 card in there, and you could just empty it in JPEGs and it just won't stop. I don't know what the Mark II used to do on that, but apparently if you're shooting RAW, full spec RAWs, with the Mark II it could do 171 RAWs, which is still tons. But shooting, say for example, so obviously 20 megapixels, I'm using the RX10 Mark IV, which is obviously a smaller sensor but an all-in-one camera. That will do 248 shots I think before it stops, and that's 10 seconds, so that's doing 24 frames per second, and 10 seconds isn't all that long. The Mark III now will do in RAW apparently 1,000 shots, so you've got a lot of time there now to basically, you've got a massive buffer, huge buffer there. So that really does make it the workhorse of all cameras, I would say. The fact that you've got that much burst rate that you can actually, obviously if you're watching someone running around a field or whatever, or chasing something or whatever, and you want to track them and you just want to get that perfect shot, you've got 1,000 chances there of one hit. But it's like if I'm shooting with the RX10 Mark IV on burst, you sort of do a 2-second burst, let off, 2-second burst, let off. And you might not need to hold your finger down all the time. But obviously this thing's a completely different type of camera. But just do that sort of frame rate, 1,000 images. That's ridiculous. So, but that's what they're designed to do. So apparently battery life on the Mark II was around about 1,200 shots, general use. Obviously if you're shooting full burst rate, you're going to get a lot more. The Mark III apparently is 2,800 shots for normal use. So basically the battery's going to last a lot longer, which is great, obviously. And another thing as well, which is really good, if you need to get the images off the camera onto a laptop or whatever, instantly to be sent away. If you're doing this sort of work, massively faster Wi-Fi transfer rate. So it's transferring the pictures off the camera very, very quickly, which is also great. But yeah, so new, like I say, quick overview. Sort of a 20.1 megapixel full frame sensor is nice and new, and I'm not sure if the processors are the same or if it's just been tweaked. But obviously it's going to be probably a slightly faster processor in there nowadays. The deep learning autofocus, I think that is literally an AI system, which like a lot of things like the Sony stuff works. It learns what there's a face in the shot, and if you move, like nowadays, if you move your hand over your face and it's locked onto the eye, it ignores the hand completely and stays with the eye. Stuff like that. I think it's kind of learning those sort of things. ISO sensitivity. So I'm used to having sort of ISO 100 to 102,000, and in the real world, I probably very rarely go above ISO 6400, to be honest. So, but you've got obviously plenty of you know, what do you call it, spec there that you can go high if you need to. Like I say, this thing does 5.5K raw video recording, which is mad. And obviously it does do 4K 60p, so it does 60 frames a second, 4K. Where obviously because this thing's so big, it's got better cooling for the sensors and stuff like that. So obviously the newer, obviously bigger camera, it's got plenty of space to basically run properly for all day, shooting all day. So this is where some of the other cameras can struggle with heat off the full frame sensors. So, but it's obviously running at high bit rate as well, so that can cause obviously a lot more heat than you would get normally if you're shooting at a lower bit rate. And obviously the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and fast connectivity wherever you are, as I said, and it works well with all the EF lenses, apparently apart from the EF-S lenses, which I'm not, like I say, I'm not a Canon user, so I'm not really in touch with all the different types of lenses. Other than that, so I'm hopefully going to have a little play with one at some point. And I really quite enjoyed using the 1DX Mark II actually, when we did a bit of a, if you look down my videos, there is one where we compared the A7R2 against the 1DX Mark II and the RX10 Mark IV, just to see how good that 600mm lens is on the RX10 Mark IV, which is obviously the all-in-one sort of bridge camera that's got a 600mm f4 lens. So against the 1DX Mark II with a 600mm f4 lens, that's huge, So it was a good little test, and it just proves that most cameras today are bloody amazing. It doesn't matter what you're using at the end of the day, and I'm not bothered if you decide to use whatever make you're going to use. Brilliant, it's all personal choice. And the fact is, if we were told to use one company and there was no other companies, we'd all go for that one, wouldn't we, at the end of the day, if there was only one choice. But because there's many choices and many needs, so everyone does something slightly differently, it's great that we've got all these different types of technology and choices from different companies out there that we can actually use. And also nowadays as well, where we can adapt, especially on the mirrorless side stuff, we can adapt to each other's lenses. So for me, the Sony to Canon lenses, or whatever, some of the old vintage lenses as well, you can obviously get away with using, but obviously the Canon mirrorless, they've been using some of the Sony lenses adapted, so it's now quite a vivid market really, where you can actually mix and match if you want to. And yeah, they don't work all that 100% as good as, say, if you got the proper lenses that fit direct, but there's the options there. And in the real world, they work well enough that you can still use them at the end of the day. So it doesn't tell you what the other thing I spotted on the camera is, it doesn't really tell you how many f-stops of dynamic range you get. Obviously with the A7R4 I'm using, you're sort of 15 stops of dynamic range, but it could, it may do here. I've not actually really looked at everything. Does it say? I don't know, but that gives you basically down here. Wex is obviously sort of spec lineup is obviously what they've been given, and tells you exactly what they've got there. Absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it's looks like it's going to be one hell of a camera, but obviously very expensive for the money. And it's just one of those things where if you need the camera, but also it's another thing. It's like when I upgraded from the A7R3 to owning that for 2 years, and I've now got the A7R4. It's not the fact that necessarily you need the camera. It's sometimes actually you look at the value of the second-hand value of the camera you've got there and then, say the A7R3, and you think, right, okay, this is worth £1,800 or whatever at the time. If I keep that for another year, that's going to be worth 900 quid. And you think, okay, well, the newest camera now is 3,500. Is it worth me now just biting the bullet and actually ordering the new camera and buying, using that sort of collateral towards the new camera without losing too much more? Because otherwise, if you obviously lose another 900 quid on the camera kind of thing, you've then got to find another £900 towards the camera when you want it in the first place. So it's one of those things. It's a bit like, you might not necessarily need it, but it's good to move with the times with new technology and stuff like that, if you use it enough. If you're using the camera once a week, once a month, I don't think you need to. But if you're using it regularly, for work, for being an enthusiast or whatever, and you're using it pretty much every couple of days or every day, it's worth the upgrade, isn't it? Because you're using it and you're getting the most from it. But like I say, if you're not using it that much, is it really worth the money? Anyway, guys, just some thoughts there. Like I say, I'm not a Canon user, and I'm not being biased towards anything. Just being open-minded. So if you've got any thoughts, please write some comments below. And if you know anything about this camera, it's quite interesting because I'm obviously going to get to try it, hopefully. And have a little play. But yeah, so please click the notification bell and the subscribe button, and I shall see you soon.